All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. I got the EVO all loaded up to head out to Sebring. Before we get into some laps, I want to go over a few things. So after the last track day at Homestead, I ended up finding that both front rotors were cracked, both on the inside and on the outside, on both sides of the car, okay? And those were Artec rotors. So I'm like, well, shit, you know, that really sucks. So I ended up also finding that the pads were actually hitting up against the rotor head. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. I'm thinking it was crappy StopTech rotor quality, you know. And so, you know, like I mentioned a few times before, StopTech is really no more. Like, you can't buy anything new from them. There's no stock on any StopTech parts and stuff like that. So the only two suppliers that you can find for these is now Gyrodisc or Paragon, and these are the Paragon rotors. So, you know, these are freshly bedded in and stuff like that. I also ended up chewing through a whole set of pads, okay? So I did have to put a whole new set of pads. I'm hoping that, you know, these rotors are better quality, that they won't crack on me after one track day, because if that's the case, then, you know, EVO track life is not gonna be a thing. All right, now in the back, I did do a few things. So it's gonna be hard to see, but if you see some blue springs back there, so I ended up changing the rear spring rates to the 600 pound, which is almost 11K. Okay, so now these Ohlings Road and Track, they come with 9K front and rear, okay? And in these cars, you do want to have a higher spring rate. It's even higher from, you know, from the factory. It comes already set up with a higher spring rate in the rear. And there's a whole, you know, mumble jumble as to why and this and that. But anyways, trying to get a little bit more rear end action, okay? So went ahead and did that. And then last, it's not really a change, but I mean, these tires are pretty worn out. These were the fronts, okay? So I'm definitely down to the wear marks. And the rears that are now on the fronts have a little bit more thread. I'm hoping that they'll last this whole track day. But I think that's it. I think that these Nankang CRSs, that'll be the end of those. And, you know, I'm gonna try to stuff a 265. I may have to run a little bit more camber, but these are 255s right now, so I think I can fit a 265 if I go with a little bit more camber. Hopefully that doesn't, you know, take away too much traction off the rear. But yeah, I don't know, you know, if these are still good or prime. Well, probably not prime, you know. So the last time I was at Sebring with the EVO, I was able to run, I believe it was a 224 or something like that. Yeah, 224. Josh was in the passenger seat. So, you know, hopefully we can improve on that. We'll see what happens. You know, hopefully the tires don't hold me back, and hopefully we don't have any more brake issues. All right, let's go to some laps. Yeah, buddy, 221.7. Man, I really wasn't expecting that. I was kind of hoping for a 22. I mean, the last I was there, I ran a 24 something with Josh in the passenger car. So I figured, hey, you know, the car definitely has a 23. Maybe it has a 22, but definitely did not expect the 21, man. So I'm definitely very happy with that. The car, you know, for what it is, I mean, 142 mile an hour peak, it's not making a ton of power, you know. I haven't put this on the dyno, but, you know, dyno to me, this is making, you know, 430, 450 max, okay? And I think that the mile an hour down the back straight, you know, definitely corroborates that, you know. But look at that G, 1.5 G, on used up 200 thread wear, you know, the Nankangs. Now, it wasn't without some pain. Man, this thing is really rough on consumables on the front axle. So I chewed. So luckily, these rotors don't look like they're cracked. I mean, they do have some crazing. A little hard to see. Oh, yeah, you can see there. So they do have some crazing and stuff like that, but, you know, they're not like cracked. Okay, but I did chew through basically another half. You know, I chewed through half the brake pads. Right, so this is like one of the pads out, right, from the passenger side. So these are my street pads. So just kind of like a visual representation. You can kind of see, you know what I mean? I basically used up half of the useful thickness. Now, to be fair, this is the same kind of wear that I used to get on the stock calipers on the front of the Corvette. I would compare these stop techs to the stock C706 calipers. Okay, the pads in the Z06 are bigger than these on the stock calipers. But anyways, as far as wear rate, you know, these Hawk pads they're not like an endurance pad, so they do wear out fast. But still, man, it's like you really can't get like 2 full days out of a set of pads. That's just insane, you know what I mean? Speaking of consumables, I destroyed the front tires, both of them. This was not as bad as the other one. So this was the front right, or the front passenger, okay? As you could tell. I am not sure how many laps I did like this, okay? I do know that at some point I did feel like performance did drop off, okay? And it seemed like this tire was getting pretty hot, but I honestly did not notice like any drastic difference. So who knows? Maybe I did a lap. Maybe I did 2 laps. I would hope not. So definitely got to keep a better eye on that. You know, that could have been dangerous. And yeah, these things are destroyed. So again, 2.5 track days on these. They did have some street miles, but I don't know, maybe 3,000 street miles. You know what I mean? And these are like roasted. So yeah, these things are tough on consumables, man. All right, so the steering wheel spacer, I really like that, man. I think it made a big difference. It made it so much easier, so much more comfortable to drive on track. And I'm getting used to it. At first I felt kind of weird, like I mentioned in the video that I did with the spacer, the previous video. But now, after driving it on track, man, I really like it. I don't feel like it's too much anymore. I feel like it's just perfect. I was able to heel toe grade. My knees weren't hitting the dash or the steering wheel. I was able to keep my hands at 3 and 9 for the most part. I still move them a little bit, but you know, for the most part, I was able to, even on turn 7, which turn 7 is a pretty tight turn, I was able to keep my hands there. I didn't feel like I was overextending them. So yeah, I think that is a nice, worthwhile mod, man. You know. Again, I think I've gotten so many messages saying, oh yeah, it's great, but it's too long. Guys, honestly, I may even redact or redo that video. It's perfect. This is the actual dimension that you want. I think if it was smaller, it would still work. It would still help. But I think at 3 inches, honestly, it's perfect. It really is, guys. Trust me. Just do it. Yeah, so man, I'm very happy with the performance of the car. I'm very happy with what I've been able to accomplish with the car. But guys, unfortunately, with the amount of consumables that this thing is chewing, you know, a set of tires every 2 or maybe even 3 days, that's still insane, you know. Half a set of brake pads for every track day, so basically every 2.5 hours. So a set of brake pads will only last me about 4 to 5 hours. That's insane. That's a crazy amount of wear. And by the way, I did find that these rotors are also cracked. So a set of rotors for every 2.5 hours of track time, that is just, guys, this thing has more consumables on the front axle than my Z011 Elite. My almost 4,000 pound, 650 horsepower, 570 wheel. Well, actually, no, I tuned it, so that was 600 or something. Yeah, 600 wheel horsepower, 4,000 pound, behemoth didn't consume things at the rate that this car does. So unfortunately, guys, I can't keep doing this with the EVO. I think that was it. For the track time with the EVO. Unfortunately, it's just too much money, too much time. Awesome car to drive, very, very fun, but I just cannot continue down this path of throwing money at this thing, So it's gonna go into just street mode. All right, guys, so I don't really know what the future holds for the EVO, but I think for now, I'm gonna make the car more of a street car and remove some of the more dedicated track stuff. I may remove the fixed bucket seat and put the stock seat back on, permanently remove the harness bar. I may put some street tires on this, the regular street tires, like some Conti, some Stream Contacts, or some Pilot Sport 4SS or something like that. I may, and if I stay on this thought that, if I keep enjoying the car on the street, I really don't need the stop tags, you know what I mean? So I could take those off, sell them, put the stock brakes back on, take the heavy rear spring, and so on and so forth, and just make this a legit, fully street car, which, it is, with the power that this car has, with the setup that it has. Honestly, this is an awesome street car. I get all kinds of thumbs ups and questions and stuff like that whenever I drive this car, more than I do on this, surprisingly, So we'll see what happens, but that's kind of where I'm at with the EVO at this point in time. All right, guys. Well, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.